You are watching Hearthstone Grandmasters here in the APAC region. This has been, we've already had one match today, I should say, sorry, between Ryvius and Possessi, which, despite a shaky ending, as I mentioned, to the end of the game, Ryvius was able to take the win, and now he's going to be up against Glory Gia. I think it's fair to say, easily the best performing player over the course of Grandmasters, both in the round robin and at the Swiss. Whether or not you want to talk about he was the best playing player, I think is very much up for debate. But the results just speak for themselves. He's been on an absolute tear recently.
Yeah, and that's across all of the regions. I don't think in either Americas or EU, their top performing Swiss player was
Yeah.
also the top performing round robin player, but Gloria's just left no room for competition there. In terms of the play, you did bring up a good point that we've seen him slip up every so often, but nothing too major as far as I remember it. And when he is at his best with all the momentum, I feel like nothing can stop this man.
I feel like nothing can. At least nothing that we've seen so far. Maybe, however, this alternate form Ryvius, in which he is banning the Demon Hunter instead of the Warrior away, and is not even bringing Demon Hunter in his own right, means we are getting another series Gia without any Demon Hunter action, which hurts me a bit, given that this is pretty much the only deck I've played this week.
Yeah, we did so much testing as well in the mirrors to just reach that next level of understanding, because as often as it's being played, I feel like the new tech inclusions of Blowtorch Saboteur are still adding a new dynamic to the matchup, and even in its base form, there's still so much to be optimized with Demon Hunter. But still, not to say that the other classes are boring. We've got great matches coming up.
We do indeed. Glory here going with the ever-popular deck, at least amongst the Japanese players, of Spell Druid. Kind of worth pointing out there again, I suppose, that it is an incredibly cheap deck in terms of dust compared to the other ones. So if there's any deck that you want to try out there, you can use the QR codes in order to access these decks and give them a go yourself, as it is also, I would say, not the hardest deck to pilot. So a great way to try and climb up the ranks along your way to legend. But for Ryvius here, with the Highlander Hunter, the Druid, and the Warlock, I hope that this time, Gia, we may get to see a Quest Warlock mirror, because that still remains one of my favorite matchups in the current metagame.
For sure. Possessi, it's strange that Ryvius has actually banned out Demon Hunter. We bring it up again in that particular matchup. Against Glory, he still remains with that mindset. There's nothing too different between Possessi and Glory's matchups, but I wonder if Ryvius will have that rigid game plan of always banning Demon Hunter, or if there's room to innovate with his lineup.
Very possibly. I think if anyone was going to be innovating, it would, of course, be Ryvius in terms of the way he's playing these matchups. But at least in terms of the first one, it is going to be, again, the Druid versus the Hunter. So overall, a fairly standard matchup on both parts here.
Yes. Pulling up the deck list right here. In terms of Glory's list, we always tend to see him bring similar lineups as to what Possessi and Alutama would be bringing, but we do know that there's a possibility for Glory and Possessi to face each other, as they're in the same group this weekend, so they might not necessarily have card for card the same lists. Already from the Warlock, I'm seeing only one Mortal Coil, which is a bit interesting.
Yeah, and I think even in the Druid, we saw from Possessi a double wild growth version of the deck, which is a very rare inclusion indeed. It was actually just 15 2-offs for Possessi, which I didn't even realize, cutting the Ysera for a slightly more anti-aggro build of the deck overall. Whereas for for Glory, it is a much more standard build of the deck that we've come to know and love from previous weeks. Probably won't be helping him too much up against the Hunter, where you do just want as much of that early game as possible. But I think, as we've seen, far from a disastrous matchup still for the Druid.
True enough. This matchup seems to be one that is not too bad on either side. I still would put the Druid at a slight advantage because of the power of Glowfly Swarm, but we've seen many a matchup where Hunter just runs away with the early game. They can play a Rotnest Drake for tempo and just close out the game before the Mount Seller is even a variable. For Ryvius, though, this hand looked like it was an entire toss to me, but he's keeping the Feywing.
What's the thinking there?
Feywing, of course, is a very problematic minion for Druid to remove. Can't be targeted, so they actually just have to use an onboard buffed Glowfly or a generated Diving Griffin to get rid of it. Very niche situations. But from Ryvius, I think I would have preferred to see him mulligan more aggressively for a 1-drop, 2-drop curve.
I think that's fair to say, because generally for me, I feel like when you go for these super aggressive Druid plans, the difference maker, Hunter plans against the Druid, the difference maker can actually be whether or not you hit a 1-drop in terms of how aggressive you can be. And if you miss that, you kind of need to transition over to more of the survival game plan if they hit the Glowfly Swarm until you can hit your more powerful plays. So I do think I agree overall.
Glory has drawn the possibility to go for Glowfly right now, but it would only give him 4 flies. I like the reservedness from here, playing out the second Rising Winds for card draw. Make sure he gets as many flies as possible, and also just doesn't want to feed the Stormhammer a target.
Yeah, I think the difference between Glowfly Swarm on turn 3 or turn 4 is not especially relevant here, because it's unlikely they'll be able to hit a huge punish for on either of these 2 turns.
Ryvius is far on the back foot now. Can respond with his Zixor or the Rot Nest, better usage of mana, because the Fairy Dragon, of course, wouldn't really be challenging anything too efficiently.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the exact same play we saw from Ryvius in the previous series, where he plays the Rot Nest, takes out whatever he can with minions or spells, then pushes, with weapons and spells, and then pushes all the minions' face. It is clearly just praying that there is no healing, and honestly, although it didn't work out for him the previous time, I like this approach.
He knows he's not dead to a Roar this turn, and even the 1 Power of the Wild doesn't allow Glory to take any value trades. For Glory, though, this turn is super interesting. We could see him use Savage Roar to trade down some minions and still maintain 2 Glowflies on board. I'm liking the look of the Overgrowth, actually, because it unlocks Mount Seller next turn and Ironbark right now if he wants to use 1. But we see him go for option number 3, which is just redevelop even wider.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is incredibly powerful. The variation I was looking at here, to be honest, was of course going for Innovate plus Crystal Power, which allowed for a full board clear and allows him to keep 6 extra health, which seemed like a worthy trade-off. Given that next turn he's likely not going for Innovate into the exotic Mount Seller anyway.
I don't know, this play seemed very weak to Zephrys for me, but of course it's Highlander, it's a one-of, but I feel like preparing for a Mount Seller on the next turn gave Glory a more consistent game plan, whereas he still could have traded off a lot of those minions with the Crystal Power and Overgrowth.
I will say, I like Glory's line the least out of the 3 options, because I was thinking I like the start of his plan, but then I think he has to kill the Rot Nest, lest he's taking 6 damage and allowing for another swing of the 3 damage very, very easily.
Ryvius is tossing the kill command phase, knows that his mana is spoken for next turn, knows that the Mount Seller is not online yet this turn, but there is the Roar for Glory.
Yeah, it was a risky line for sure. It's got to be said, and very nearly didn't work out for him. But Ryvius gave himself the best chance of closing out the game. Dino Tamer Brand lethal next turn. He just needed Glory to not hit the Savage Roar, but fortunately for him, he was able to get there, despite playing very happy-go-lucky with his health total.
Man, it was a tough decision there at the end. Maybe Ryvius could have gone for a little bit more trading, but of course he wouldn't have given himself that lethal out with the brand on the next turn. On both sides, I feel like there were tons of permutations we could have discussed on and on and on, but that will just be our game 1, and Glory is in a great position now.
Looking very, very strong indeed, I will say, heading into the next match. Taking the win against the Highlander Hunter, I think has proven to be a pretty instrumental part of trying to take a win overall, because even though the Hunter has a good matchup against the Warlock, I think it's fair to say, up against the Warrior and the Druid, it feels shaky, I'm going to say, at least hovering around a 50% win rate if you're being generous to the Highlander Hunter. But now, for Ryvius, it is that chance to take this crucial win. I think this matchup for him that he's going to be facing now of the Hunter against the Warlock is probably the most important win he could take out of any of the combinations of decks matching up against each other.
Very true. This is Hunter's best matchup to get through, and we did see in the previous series that Ryvius was struggling on that Hunter, taking a loss to Warrior from Possessi, and also against Druid, it was only able to finally get there versus this exact deck. So Ryvius, with a great opener, allows himself to keep the Dino Tamer brand.
Yeah, looking pretty strong here. Glory, not so much. I'm going to go ahead and say, even though he's running the same build that the Japanese players seem to prefer with Kartut defenders, which of course will help with a little bit of the health gain up against the Hunter. Overall, this looks mighty scary.
Pretty good top deck for Glory, though, allows him to challenge should just a Fairy Dragon come down on this turn. It's somewhat forcing Ryvius to spend the turn clearing. And the Mortal Coil is great here.
Yeah, just works out pretty well. I think that was also, another Questing Explorer, should he want to go for it. Probably a tap, though.
This is a tap? Right.
Yeah.
Just because the next turn looks to be Questing tap, and you really want to get as much card draw as possible while not under that much.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's nice against a couple of the plays, but it's also just very, very weak against some of the plays from Ryvius. Obviously, Stormhammer primarily, but also Diving Griffin is pretty good. Animal Companion can just not... It can mean that Questing doesn't really do anything against the board.
Well spotted there. But this Blowtorch is pretty dang relevant here. It means Glory can't just tap and Questing this turn. We could be looking at a double minion play, Zephyrus just for tempo, or a use of Soulfire alongside the tap.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely looking at Soulfire plus tap. I'm just wondering whether you'd go for the tap first if you were going to go for that line, or of course just tank the 3 damage is a very valid way to go about it for sure.
So this to me screams a Dark Sky setup, saving all that many cards in hand. He does take 3 damage, but he's setting up for a bigger swing on the next turn. You can get behind it.
Interesting. Zixor coming down. This does make sense, because of course if he picked the Desert Spear, he would then be tracking over the Faceless Corruptor, which is one of the best cards to go along with it. And Desert Spear is generally an anti-aggro, rather than an anti-control card.
And we did see Ryvius had the option to go Scavengers and immediately coin out a 3-drop there to be more resilient against Dark Skies. But I think he's committed to holding to this coin for the Dino Tamer brand or Tiamat if something annoying gets in the way. And his turn 5 is pretty easily spoken for with the Scavengers now.
Yeah, if he hit the Zixor, he was a little bit sad because his turn would have been, you know, much harder to fill out the mana effectively, but it could still have been Imprisoned plus Beaming Sidekick, and then he would have had 6/6 Zixors to be going with on the following turn. So no matter the outcome, it worked out great there for Ryvius.
Glory is putting a big fat stop in the way of Dino Tamer brand. 2 layers of this Kartut defender. Ryvius probably, I was going to say, looking at the Tiamat instead, but this Rot Nest looks pretty sick.
Yeah, I mean, what are you even doing if you do Tiamat? Like, Wind Fury Rush in order to connect the 6th face? It's rough,
Man,
no matter how you
really
slice
rough.
it. Yeah.
The Diving Griffin has to go. Look at it. Beaming Sidekick just a little bit short of being able to put the Rot Nest, the Griffin out of range. How do I forget the name of Griffin? I keep calling for that card.
It's your favorite card, Gia. How dare you?
I don't know. Well,
I was looking at, also, it's worth saying, fairly heavily at a Imprisoned Felmor there being coined out, because if you don't do it now, it's never going to be played. I think that's fine, because it means he has the option to go coin Alex, but he did have still a very powerful curve with 7-8-9 or 7-7-9 over the next couple of turns.
I think for Ryvius here, he values the option of deviating from the curve over the Felmo, which doesn't come online for many more turns, and I think that's perfectly reasonable. So for Glory, we could just see the Dark Skies to clear, plot twist to get that quest closer and closer to activation.
I like the sound of that a lot. This hand is, it's not useless, because he has the Twisting Nether in hand, which is of course a very strong answer against whatever Glory, Ryvius could throw down on the following turn. But like you say, it's just more important to get this quest online. It's how he has any chance of taking the win whatsoever.
Hunter Ace always plot twists there. It seems to be that the prevailing thinking from the more successful Quest Warlock players I've seen is that they plot twist even if they have a good follow-up, because they're A, likely to draw back a good follow-up, and B, when you get the quest active,
yeah,
you can just go for such insane swings with the zero-cost dragons.
It's a very contentious point, and I feel like the jury is still somewhat out on that as a line of thinking overall.
Ryvius is not going for Bran on empty board here. This is pretty interesting to me. Gonna get eaten up by this Caladan though.
Yeah, this at the very least makes for, you know, forcing mana out of Glory's hand. It's the potential for a huge amount of damage on the following turn.
Yeah, I think the thinking there for Ryvius is that whether it's Bran or Tiamat that comes down, it is a must answer, and then he follows up with Alexstrasza in every world. So he would rather have that big board and then charge from hand.
Not an especially impressive bunch of dragons
True.
here. Even to the extent where Ryvius holds back the fairy dragon just to keep the corrosive breath alive.
The Waxadread might be pretty relevant here. Not right
Maybe.
now, but it can get very annoying for Warlock in the future.
That's
Ryvius'
fair.
deck is still pretty thick, so unlikely. Wow.
Oh!
Wow! I did not expect that.
This is a big boy play,
is
Gia, but with Zephyrus on the other side.
So he could give Wind Fury.
Right.
That's 23. There's Corrosive Breath for 25. It's 27 as far as I can see.
I count 29, right?
29?
For
Okay,
sure.
Yeah.
Oh, 28, sorry.
28. We were all wrong, of course.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Meet in the middle.
Uh-huh. Yes, it is 28 here, maximum from Zephyrus. I think
Oh.
it will just give Wind Fury, even if it's not lethal, if it sees an 8/8. Other options
Right,
are
yeah.
Shadow or Death. That's also very relevant here. But
But of
for
course,
Glory to go for such an aggressive play, how much burst does he have in hand?
right, exactly. He needs to be afraid of just dying. Ryvius does, at least, on the other side.
One Nether Breath. I didn't catch whether the Zephyrus for Glory was active.
Is he going for Healing Touch here?
I think he's afraid.
Whoa!
He didn't get the Healing Touch. I mean, Glory just made an alpha play, right? He said, I have lethal in hand, so Ryvius was scared.
Oh,
Look for the
yes.
Healing Touch.
But
it's not there.
Call it a bluff, call it the best play that Glory had available, whatever it was. Ryvius believes himself to be dead here, but the good news is, for him at least, unless this is a Mally off the top, and even then actually he's still clocking.
Really, the Drake? Okay, so this gets him Aranasi and Moarg for heal. I was just looking at Tap Nether there for Glory. But this, of course, gives him a lot of heal. Zephyrus used. Ryvius is now on, looking to me like a Zigzor game plan.
Oh, it's such an interesting point, GM. Maybe, but it's one of those things where, you know, you should know what Zephyrus is going to offer you, but it's so difficult to predict exactly every time how to get the cards you want.
Oh!
Whoa!
The Nether Breath was used, though. I think if Glory just played Malagos Plot Twist or Rain of Fire Plot Twist, he's almost guaranteed to get lethal there, but there's a small percentage where he doesn't hit it.
Yeah.
So, just taking the safe play. He knows he's not dead this turn, and he can get it next turn.
But now Ryvius setting up his own counter lead on the backswing. Still not quite there for Glory. So likely to hit
Oh,
it.
there it is.
Okay. Whew. And now, Gia, this loss for Ryvius is absolutely devastating. He now has to 3-0 sweep the best deck in the game in Pain Warrior.
Yikes is all I have to say to that. We saw a salty clap from Ryvius there. Honestly, from Glory, that Alex Straza was so not hesitant at all that I cannot fault Ryvius at all for thinking that he was just reading that there was 12 damage bursts on the other side. It's not that hard. It's Nether Breath, Soulfire, or some combination of the Nether Wing with Rain of Fire for another 4 damage, but that was so cool to watch. I don't think I've ever seen bluffs in Hearthstone work out quite as well as that did.
Yeah, it was a very interesting dynamic, and I will say that for Ryvius here, the fact that Hunter is struggling so heavily for him, maybe something different happened in testing. It's a small sample size for sure, but I've got to say, I feel like Demon Hunter would have performed better in most of the matchups he's seen so far, be it Druid or the Warlock so far, but clearly he's got some kind of a thinking that we are not privy to. But it does look like we are going to sadly have to go to a very short break while we sort out some issues that we are having at the moment. But do not go anywhere. We'll be back as quick as we possibly can with the rest of Glory versus Ryvius. We're back. Issues sorted out, and we're ready to jump into the rest of the series, in which Ryvius is undoubtedly feeling pretty terrible right now. He was, after winning against Possessi, primed to go through to the semi-finals. But Glory, even if it's just the only series of Hearthstone he plays today, having already got a bye earlier on, looks to be ready to just sail through to the semi-finals on Sunday, given that he only has to win one match out of 3 with his Warrior.
Yeah, and it is a warrior that tells a story in and of itself because this is the deck that is consistently banned throughout GM. We've only
Yeah.
seen a handful of players in APAC even dare to leave it up. Ryvius, Surrender more recently, and back in the earlier weeks, for Surrender, it seems like he's the only one who's had reasonable success with that strategy.
And taking a look at the list specifically, the one egg version still got Terran Core themed in there. I don't think that makes an essentially big difference against the Hunter specifically. I guess it is a little bit difficult for the Hunter to remove all those early eggs, but still, Gia, you're generally just looking for the same powerful stuff in the early. Getting down a fourth egg for a nice big weapon, and if possible, juicing up your Warmall challenges.
Yep. Pretty good opener for Glory already. No challenger in hand, but he has that card draw available. But 2 weapons? The Corsair, for better or for worse, is guaranteed to get Ankar now. Oh,
Ooh. Interesting.
liking that. But we've seen Ryvius be the most patient out of anyone I've ever seen with his Zephyrus usage.
So interesting, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
to be fair, the times when he's been liberal with it has been mainly against Druid, I feel like, where there's not anything specifically that you're looking forward to hit. Obviously, you can save it to answer a Glowfly Storm, but that's generally a losing play anyway, because you have to go for like Lightning Storm, which is pretty disastrous. Whereas against Warrior, there are several fantastic cards that you can hit. Weapon removal is fantastic, of course, to take out their buffed up weapon. Execute or Shadower Death, something like that, to take out a big Warmall challenger can be huge as well.
You're right. I think I can definitely get behind being more patient with it in this matchup. The only real loss of curving out for Ryvius, so to speak, by not playing Zephyrus is that turn 2, where he only plays Beaming Sidekick. And even then, it develops a minion that's relatively more resilient to a weapon. He still had a turn 3 spoken for before he top-decked the Blowtorch Saboteur. And now he gets to squeeze a little bit more value out of Zephyrus in the future.
He does, and now it's a difficult turn, Gia, because Glory just equipped a weapon and swung into the Blowtorch Saboteur, which does not necessarily say that he has the the Risky Skipper in hand, but it does imply that, I think, to an extent.
It really does. And I like this from Ryvius so much. Power of the Wild. Some people would snap Ooze there, but
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Glory was telegraphing Risky Skipper turns. And oftentimes, when the mana is this low, the difference between 1 extra health and not there is all the difference in the world.
This is sick. I think this is so clever because, yes, it's making a wide board with most of them only having 3 health, but it is difficult for a Risky Skipper to do 3 damage this early on in the game.
Yeah. Glory can go up to 5 mana, and he's got both Skipper.
He can do it, obviously, on this turn, even if it's just both lackeys with a Sky Raider. But that is expensive. He doesn't draw any cards out of it along the way either.
Getting a lot of resources out of Glory's hand. It does unlock the Serpent Egg, which Ryvius has to worry about, but his follow-up looks fine with just the big ol' whelp.
Yep.
Someone's gotta lead the charge.
Hickey Finger.
Even even getting the 1 extra damage to base with the Rush Lackey. But the important thing now is for Ryvius, he is just hitting damage card after damage card. Unless an Armor Smith can come down for Glory. He's just going to die before he gets anywhere close to lethal.
It's true. And from Ryvius's perspective, he saw the first Skipper not from an Ankar. And so he feels it's very unlikely that the second one is there. Ryvius just sees one path to victory, and it's straight to the face.
I think this is very cleverly played by Ryvius. He played to the hand he was dealt with a Kill Command and the Zephyrus very, very well.
I like it a lot as well. For Glory now, how does he get rid of the big whelp without base tanking?
I wonder.
I mean, you could trade both minions, but that seems really, really slow. Yeah, okay, fishing for effective lackey here. Still ends up base tanking because he didn't necessarily want to give up his skipper with any lackey.
Which means
This is
already for
rough.
Ryvius, he's just a mana away from lethal on this turn.
Oh, Glory not even armoring up.
He'd have to throw out the coin as well if he wanted
Yeah.
to.
Wow! Have your choice of burst, Ryvius. It's all here.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, even though the 1-1 is pretty terrible to hit, unless there's an Armor Smith, again, it just does not matter. He has the lethal on the following turn.
Yeah. And Glory, we saw him go for Corsair Cash over armor up there because he knows he needs Armor Smith. Just the incremental gain turn after turn is not enough. So any measure he'd take to thin out his deck was prioritized there. But we can see, not going to work out. Unless he evolves into an Armor Smith? Not a thing?
I mean, I'm looking here, Ethereal Lackey into Shield Block, which draws Armor Smith, and then you can gain a bit of armor. But, like, you know, we're way out there already in terms of his outs.
Not even dealing with the Dragon Bane.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, from Glory's perspective, he's just hoping to kill the Dragon Bane and armor up, but armor is too expensive.
I mean, I think he's already considering going for something like Rampage on the 1-1, Risky Skipper, Witchy Lackey, because his only out is hitting Armor Smith off of the Evolve.
I'll show you who's boss.
Sure.
Yep, that's the play. Oh, so close.
You know, well spotted to even think of that. But there you go. Ryvius takes it. Finally able to get a win with his Hunter there, but can he actually complete a reverse sweep on Warrior? That would be a feat.
It would indeed, and still an undeniably uphill climb with both his Warlock and his Druid remaining. Slightly different lists compared to the usual stuff a lot of the time for both of his lists actually here, with of course the double copy Breath of Dreams and the 2 Emerald Explorers in his Druid, and then in the Warlock going for the kind of 1-on-1 build that I haven't seen before, with 1 Abyssal Summoner, 1 Kartut Defender, and of course Frizz in there as well. I guess the benefit of this kind of a list, weirdly enough, is even though we saw him get a Zephrys active with 13 cards left in the deck earlier on, it's kind of more likely for that to happen when you're running more one-offs.
Yeah, there's also that inclusion of an Ooze as a one-off, cutting Mortal Coil for that, which is a very big deal against Warrior if you're able to cut off some of their card draw from the Ankar, or even give them slower early turns with the live wire lands, can just give you that extra time to hit the lethal. But we are going to see first the Druid from Ryvius. He had a great draw the first time this deck was seen on stream.
Yes.
But how's it going to be now? Wow, still great!
Pretty good, I'm going to say. Obviously, there are very few dragons in the list, so he is far from guaranteed to hit one. And obviously, Fungal Fortunes does not help with that goal, discarding all minions along the way.
Wow, with 2 Mount Sellers in hand, though, that's kind of a relief for Ryvius in some ways.
True.
The Fungal can't discard those at the very least. Of course, we're still looking at Ysera and Double Emerald. Oh my god, Ryvius can just... He's a god. No words.
I'm going to go ahead and say that that was crucial for him to pull things back, because already for Glory, we are looking at an insane curve for
You're
him
right.
here.
Inner Rage Rampage followed up by a copy on the War Challenger. It's not something we've seen for several weeks, and that's why Warrior has been banned out.
But
Ryvius is gearing up for a big response.
Yeah, he's got his own very, very powerful turns. Glowfly into Emerald, into Exotic Mount Seller. He probably survives until that point, right?
Yeah.
What to do?
He's even considering healing for nothing rather than dealing damage, just to avoid enraging it and allowing for these Bloodsworn effects.
I completely agree.
Of course, the underlying thing to say is so as to avoid overdraw.
There's also consideration for tossing Moonfire instead to Glory's face, for example, that only punishes a Battle Rage in the far future. It's curious because Crystal Power, I think, for 2 damage later on could be more useful, especially since on the Mount Seller turn he can coin it out. But
yeah.
Wow.
Okay, well, now things get interesting for Glory, right? Because he can't go for either... Sorry, Inner Rage Rampage plus Bloodsworn or double Bloodsworn on this turn. So to me, it does make sense to hold back, at least for the moment. Because this not only sets up for a powerful Bloodsworn turn, but also for the potential most powerful play from Ryvius.
Sure. It gives him an additional swing to get rid of a Glowfly. And yeah, there was just no combination for Glory there to get all the payoff in the course of 2 turns. Had to be 3. So it's also a good choice to go for the Inner Rage now. It makes the Warmaul a little bit more soft, but this is the turn that Ryvius wants to extend and not remove, so it's a good time.
Yeah, exactly. And finding the risky skipper as well is a big deal, because now Glory is has the potential at the very least to clear off this board.
How does he even portion out the threats? Is it just all in on the Warmaul? He could buff up his egg, but the copied Warmaul, of course, would not be as good. But buffing up the egg allows him to trade off one for Glowfly.
Isn't it just a risky skipper turn? Like, is he doing any of the Bloodsworn stuff this turn? If he gets Sky Raider and is able to hit a 1-mana Pirate off of that, he can also get the Rampage down, which would be absolutely insane, setting up for double Bloodsworn next turn.
Okay, sign me up.
Someone's gotta lead the charge.
Oh!
Cashing in an Inner Rage now to get more damage onto the board, giving Ryvius no time to breathe.
This makes sense as well. Whether you want to go for the Rampage this turn, next turn, whatever, this board is not being dealt with anytime soon.
Fog Beam not cheapened, but Ryvius still has quite a few shots at a Beast to help pull him out of this one. Zixor or Diving Griffin, of course. Big ones. There's a Griffin, lets him soften up the Warmaul Challenger, but no taunts.
No taunts indeed.
That means yet another copy.
And this one, bigger than ever, able to cleanly eat the exotic Mount Seller, develop yet more threats. And Ryvius is left with the best option of Overflow into healing all of these to basically full health.
It is a nightmare for Ryvius. He could... Man.
Okay.
The Bog Beam is 0 next turn.
Right. You can clear off 2 of them.
Yeah, if we see an Iron Bark, that could be big, but nope. Surely it's better than Overflow for healing most of these, right?
Oh, yeah.
One consolation is that Glory is only 1 card in hand now, so Ryvius is just hoping that the next turn is surely slower. Only Battle Rage is very scary.
I mean,
so
I'm going to say that despite the incredibly powerful start for Glory, Ryvius is not in that bad of a position anymore. The big Warmaul is obviously very scary, yes, but he has Overflow to come down on this turn, set up for a powerful Mount Seller play next turn.
Is it Overflow this turn? Okay. I don't think it's Overflow this turn.
Is it really not Overflow this turn? He can take out 2 of them and draw up.
I was looking at Mount Seller plus Bog Beam, but he's just relying on the Porcupine to get rid of them this way. He misses, though.
Oh.
And that's going to be game.
I concede.
There's no way to avoid taking the damage.
Takes a risk, it does not pay off, and you can see what it means to Glory. He is going to be our first player going through to the semi-finals on Sunday after a ridiculously impressive run through the Swiss and the round robin. You're going to see what it means to this man. Well played, Glory. You deserve it.
Yeah, wow. From Ryvius there, we saw some brilliant plays, I would also say, in the earlier turns, in the Hunter versus Warrior matchup. Yep. I really like the use of Zephrys. You pointed out as well, the Power of the Wild was a great spot, but ultimately at the end, didn't quite get there, because how can you really expect a 3-0?
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that it is the most banned deck at the moment, and also the highest win rate deck at the moment. It's just the best deck in the game. Does so well against pretty much every deck in the metagame at the moment. I'm still left a little bit weirded out by that final turn. I mean,
yeah, me too.
I can see how his play gave him a chance to just run away with the game if he didn't die on the spot. but it seemed fairly risky to me, whereas he could have just made a board that was so wide on the following turn that, an 8-attack Warm Wall Challenger, while very scary, potentially wouldn't be able to be running away with the game on its own if he was able to get down a big Iron Bark.
Yeah. Well, curious to know what Ryvius was going through, or what was going through Ryvius's brain at the end there, but that will still not be the last we're seeing of him. He's moving down to the elimination bracket where he faces the winner between Possessi and Shaxi. But Glory, my gosh, what a dominant performance throughout the Swiss, the round robin, and even in playoffs.
Yeah, very, very impressive stuff. Let's take a look at the bracket now to get a visual representation of what we have been talking about. As we can see there, Glory crowned as our king, and rightly so. I said it last week, the king of APAC for this season, going through to the semi-finals in very impressive fashion. Shaxi vs Possessi in our elimination match, as I turn into Sean Connery, is going to be our first match up next. The loser of whom is just out of any contention to go through to the playoffs. To go through to the global finals later on in the year. And it should be, Gia, a very, very exciting match. Be it amazing or very questionable, no matter what, I have loved seeing Shaxi play this season.
Oh, for sure. We sadly, or maybe happily for some people out there, don't get to see Ash Priest, as Sottle has called it, and I have called it, but apparently that deck can make it to Legend, so maybe not that garbage. Shaxi has settled on a much more standard lineup, and I think appropriately so when the stakes are this high.
Oh, yes. And then, of course, it will be the winner facing off against Ryvius, but taking